welcome to this morning's edition of the MPC Markets Morning Call, 4th of December 2025. My name is Mark Gardner. Welcome to the morning wrap-up. Now, weak jobs data in the form of private payrolls overnight unexpectedly contracted in November. So the reason we don't normally pay attention to private payrolls too much. However, it's the most recent and relevant data, I suppose, in terms of employment. And, it contracted in November, declining by 32,000 according to ADP National Employment Report. So economists had actually expected a mild gain in that one. So it's now pushed rate cut expectations to 90% of a 25 basis point reduction next week. PCE data is out on Friday night or our Saturday morning. That will really either be, that'll be the deciding factor. Essentially, if it comes in anywhere near expected, even slightly higher than expected, showing inflation, but I would say that we're going to get that cut. It doesn't go to a 90% probability but I still think there is a very large chance they don't cut. Personally, as this year has shown and the last 18 months has shown, you don't argue with the market sometimes. Now, Salesforce reported earnings after the death as well. They went very, very well. EPS was expected around about the $2.90 mark. They got $3.25. They beat by 39 cents. Revenue was 10.3. It was slightly better than expected. So they beat on top and bottom lines. But the big deal for this is that so there's a few big statements on their AgentForce and Data 360 products, which are their agentic AI products, where they have, quote, seen significant increase in enterprise demand. So in terms of end user monetization, this is pretty much one of the first signs of, real world at scale, agentic AI monetization. I mean, you could debate Microsoft, but really, I think it's ServiceNow and Salesforce. I've always said on these morning podcasts and in many of the investment presentations, things I've done are very much the pointy end of the sword in terms of an at scale company monetizing AI. So they've got targets for 60 billion plus organic revenue target. And they're by 2030, and obviously they're around about the 40 odd mark at the moment. And I think they lifted their full year revenue guidance by about $500 million as well, from 41 to 41.5, and their EPS from 302 to 304. Excuse me, and that AgentForce and Data 360 products hit 1.4 billion in annual recurring revenue, up 114% year on year. 9,500 paid AgentForce deals, 3.2 trillion tokens processed. So as we can sort of see there that it rallied about 6% in the aftermarket. I would imagine the likes of ServiceNow and things will probably follow a little bit higher as well, potentially. And overall, I think that's not a bad sign that we're, because everyone's been, if you look at the charts of Salesforce and ServiceNow, they've gone through the roof, then they've come back a bit. Not a bit, quite significantly. And everyone's been waiting around for a year for these guys to monetize AI. Just another classic example of the market getting way ahead of itself. So Microsoft was hit overnight as they reduced sales KPI targets for their sales guys. They come out and defended the move. It just wasn't, I guess, a good headline overall. But the big guys last night were not holding up the market, and that is it's in stark opposition to what's happened all of this year. The rest of the market's actually carrying, is pulling its weight for a change. So we've got a night where, as we saw back here, The Dow was up 0.8%, the S&P was up 0.35%, the Nasdaq was up 0.2%, the Russell was up nearly 2%. And you've got to and despite the fact that Nvidia, Apple, Meta, Microsoft, Amazon were all and Netflix were all down overnight. For the market to get a positive result, I mean, Tesla was up 4%. Don't know what that was necessarily on the back of. It's had a bit of a hard hit lately, but I don't think we've seen this. We've seen this all year, and here we are on the 4th of December. A map where the market has finished positive, but the Mag 7 or Mag 10 or the mega, the hyperscalers or whatever the hell they're called now, have actually been weighing in the market. Google's still relatively positive. That was the only one overall. But the chip makers as well weren't really a positive for the market generally. United Health up 4.6%. Rallied. I think there was some earnings stuff there. Healthcare sector looked fairly reasonable. The banking sector doing very well. Obviously, buoyed on those rate cuts as well. It was a bit of a not a very 2025 kind of night last night, I've got to say. Just running through these Salesforce income statements. Shout out to App Economy Insights, and for the graphics here, they're sensational. Go and check them out on Substack. Sales was up 8%, service was up 9%. Their platform up 19%. They bought Slack. Integration analytics up 6%. All of the metrics going in the right direction. Revenue in total up 9%. Their margin, their gross profit margin, well, it's a 78% margin, hasn't moved, but operating profit, 21% margin, up 1 basis point's good. But net profit was, net profit was 2.1 billion, 20% margin, and that has improved by 4 basis points as well. So all of the metrics going in the right direction generally, and there's nothing concerning on the operating cost side, I've got to say, either. So, I would be having a look at those, it could be the green shoots of that end user monetization, and not just this AI boom. I mean, they are the richest companies in the world, but it's not just Jensen, Sam Altman, but like the Microsoft CEO and everyone, just Larry Ellison standing around playing pass the parcel at some AI party, because that's really what's been going on. So I think this is far more important than what people will ultimately give it credit for, I've got to say. But anyway, it's what it is. Today we've got trade balance in Australia. There's been a few little corporate deals and things go through as well. I think Bendigo Bank's bought RACQ Bank's book, which looks like an okay deal. Cash Converters has done an acquisition. There's been a few, Regis Healthcare sold a couple of aged care homes. Look, and overall, we've got HP tomorrow in terms of earnings, but I think the market's largely on hold until core PCE on Friday night. That's a huge risk. If that's high, which I'm sure it won't be, just it's convenient for Trump for it not to be. But everywhere else in the world seems to be showing inflation. The US has put tariffs on, but there's no inflation there. It doesn't seem to add up to me. But it doesn't mean that the numbers won't come out to exactly what they need to get their rate cut. But if it is high, I've got to say this market has probably a good 6 to 7% to get back at absolute minimum. Silver it got to $59 last night in the futures. It got to $59.65 yesterday in the futures during our session. If that big bar that wasn't there up 11% for the week for silver, the real quiet achiever has been copper. We've seen record highs on LME copper. Apart from that Trump tariff announcement, which sent US copper to nearly $6 and then straight back down again, this would be probably the record high for the for the COMEX copper as well at around about $5.40 a pound or thereabouts, and looking like really good technical momentum building behind it. Uranium still doing well. The URA ETF up 3% overnight. Bitcoin maintaining its recovery. Platinum is up as well, 1%, 4% for the week. But this move in copper is just it's a really nice grind higher. It's sort of everything else is sort of distracting from it, and that was kind of what was happening in silver a couple of weeks ago. Very, very similar patterns, I think, in my opinion, to that silver run. I tell you what, like I said, the iron ore has been dragging down the big miners here, Rio and BHP. But so help me God, if iron ore busts up, this thing is, those two stocks are probably 15% cheap, if not more, because everything's rallied except iron ore that these guys produce. So yeah, so that might drive the big miners higher today. I still think there's some serious value in the likes of the small silver miners. Probably pretty dangerous to be buying up here in the ETF for the physical, but and in silver and Broken Hill and BHM and ASL are both, one ASL is a bit more of an explorer, BHM's in production. They're lagging, I would have thought, overall, and I would expect them to be much higher if silver just, even if silver stays here or around here. They're significantly lagging if they're, if silver continues its rally, which we definitely expect it to do. So, yeah, there's some pretty decent positives in there. Obviously, there's, where you can't forget the fact that rate cut expectations being at 90% is an excuse to buy the market. But let's not forget that, weak payrolls numbers is not a good thing either. And, we've just got to be a little bit careful being super bullish on and celebrating poor economic numbers. So, yeah, but for those of you who are Ausbiz viewers, myself and Mark Morland today will be on the call with the US stocks. Bunch of interesting stocks in there. Salesforce we talked about, so will Google. And a bunch of others that, like Lenovo, some really global flavour, a couple of Hong Kong stocks in there and things like that. Yeah, for those of you who do tune into that today at 12 o'clock or watch it on demand afterwards. But apart from that, guys, have a great day. We'll speak again tomorrow. General advice warning. The content presented in this presentation is intended for informational purposes only and provides general advice only. It does not take into account your personal objectives, financial situation, or specific needs. This information should not be the sole resource when making investment decisions. We strongly recommend you seek the advice of a financial professional.